Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
Good. Nice to see everyone this morning. Great to have everyone back. And again, these sermons are being brought to you by the Church of God Seventh Day with headquarters in Salem, West Virginia. Please contact us for any additional information. We can put you on our mailing list. You can get our magazine, the tracts, and of course our Sabbath school lessons for you to study each and every Sabbath. I've got a cute little story for you this week. I already told this one to Judy, but there was an 80-year-old lady that got picked up for shoplifting. And she goes before the judge, and the judge says to her, he said, "What did you steal?" She said, "A can of peaches." And he said, "Why did you steal it?" She said, "I was hungry." So he said, "Well, how many peaches were in the can?" So she says, 6. He says, "Okay." He said, "Then you're going to spend 6 days in jail, 1 day for each peach." And with that, the husband speaks up. He said, "Judge," he said, "can I say something?" Judge says, "Absolutely." He said, "She also stole a can of peas." Anyway. Okay. All right, in keeping with our theme, as it were, last week I told you we were going to start on, we talked about prophets in general. Today we're going to talk about Samuel in particular. So turn with me, if you would, to first book of Samuel. And of course, this is a very, very familiar story, but it bears repeating because we learn about some very strong characters in the characters of Hannah and, of course, her son Samuel. And we learn about some very weak characters when we read about, Eli, his sons, and Samuel's sons. And the big thing about this book, we're going to talk about, Samuel himself, but the big thing about the book is we learn about the failures of the priests. We learn about the failures of the prophets. Now that would be Samuel's sons, of course. And we learn about the failure of the people. Because the people, basically say, "Listen, we want a king. We don't want to deal with God. We want a king. We want to be like everybody else." Wrong. That's the overwhelming thing that I think gets most of us in trouble. Wanting to be like everybody else. We've been called to be different. And that's the key. That's the real key. Okay. 1 Samuel. This is the story. 1 Samuel chapter 1. It says, "Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, and Ephrathite." Okay? And he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. So of course this was a big thing to her. And if we go into verse 6, it says, "And her adversary," in other words, the other woman, "also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb." So you see, it was almost like bragging rights in a sense. It's like, I have children, you don't have children. It was really cruel on her part to do that to Hannah. But Hannah, it says, this is what it says. It says, "But the Lord had shut up her womb." And I think when we look at that, when we read that, I think there's a purpose here. I think that the Lord knew what kind of woman that Hannah was, of course. And so Hannah is going to vow a vow, and she's going to say to the Lord, she's going to say to him, like, Lord, if you would give me, like a child, this man-child, of course, in a sense. If we turn to verse 10, it says, and she was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, that thou wilt indeed look upon the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but wilt give unto thine handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. So he was going to be a Nazarite, okay? Not a Nazarene. Christ was a Nazarene. This man was a Nazarite. These were men that they took vows, okay? And as a result, they were different. And this particular man, he would have long hair because he was a Nazarite. Some people try to tell us that, Christ was this Nazarite, and he had long hair, and it's okay for us to have long hair, and they're incorrect when they say that. Okay, so she makes this vow, of course, and what happens? Drop down to verse 20. The Lord hears her, and it says that in 20, wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked him of the Lord. All right, so her vow, she made her vow, her prayers were answered, and of course what she does is she follows through on her vow. If you make a vow to the Lord, you need to make sure you follow through with what you say, and of course she does. So, and then in verses 24 and 25, after he was weaned, in 24 it says, and when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh, and the child was young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. Now Eli was the priest. Eli would be the priest of the temple. And of course, now she's turning her child over to, Eli. She's turning her child over to the Lord. He's going to be trained in the ways of the Lord. And Hannah was, she was okay with this because the Lord had blessed her. She had vowed, and she's following through on her vow and doing what she says. Okay? Now, if we go to chapter 2, and then we're going to go to verse 12. It says, now the sons of Eli, now that was that Hophni. We learned that was Hophni and Phinehas, I guess, in a sense. Yeah, if you go back to 3, this would be chapter 1:3. It talked the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. Right? So it says, now the sons of Eli were sons of Belial. Now I want to point something out to you. That word Belial, if you look that up, you think it's an individual. It's not. It shouldn't even be capitalized. It means worthless man, or that they were lawless. Okay? So if we read it like, now the sons of Eli were sons of lawlessness, or worthless men. They were useless. Okay? They weren't doing what they were supposed to do. Corrupt. Okay, corruption. Okay. And of course it says they knew not the Lord. So these were the kinds of sons that Eli had. So what's happening is their father was a better man, but they're not paying attention to him. And so the priesthood is in decline here. This is what we're seeing. This is, again, what I said, the failure of the priesthood itself. 22 to 25, it says, now Eli was very old, and heard that his sons did unto all Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he said unto them, why do ye such things? For I hear of your evil dealings by all this people. Nay, my sons, for it is no good report that I hear, ye make the Lord's people to transgress. You see, if the leader's not strong, the people are not strong. And so because they were lax and they did the things that they were doing, everybody else said, well, they're doing it, I might as well do it. It's okay for them, it's okay for me, why not? And so this is what happens. And so it just follows. And so if they're not doing the right thing, then people certainly are not going to do the right thing because they're not leading. They're not leading properly. 25, if one man sin against another, the judge shall judge him. But if a man sin against the Lord, who shall entreat for him? Notwithstanding, they hearken not unto the voice of their father, because the Lord will slay them. It didn't matter to them. It didn't matter what he said, what he did. They were not going to pay attention to him. But in 26, what happens to Samuel? What is he doing? He's not affected by them. And this is a good thing. It says, and the child Samuel grew on and was in favor in both with the Lord and also with men. So he was growing up properly, and he was really, the Lord's man. And so here we have the raising of Samuel, as it were. He's going to be a prophet. Okay? So he grew spiritually, physically, morally. He was a good man, good person, good student. And then, of course, in 27 it says, and there came a man of God unto Eli and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Did I plainly appear unto the house of thy father when they were in Egypt in Pharaoh's house? And did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to offer upon mine altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? And did I give unto the house of thy father all the offerings made by fire of the children of Israel? Wherefore kick ye at my sacrifice and mine offering, which I have commanded in my habitation? And honorest thy sons above me, to make yourselves fat with the chiefest of all the offerings of Israel my people. So see, Eli knows things are not right. And he's really not forceful with his sons. And because of it, the Lord sees that he's really giving into his sons and not honoring him as much as he should, and honoring his sons and not really making them do what they should do. And of course, this is a no-no. It's not acceptable. It would be no different if we see our kids doing something wrong. We need to say something. It's not right. They know it's not right. People know things are not right. People know, some of the things, some of the laws that we're making right now are not right. They know it. Yet they don't want to do anything about it. And of course, as a little bit of a side note, I don't want you to feel too sorry for Hannah, because Hannah continues to be a blessed woman. If we go to verse 21, this is chapter 2, verse 21, it says, And the Lord visited Hannah, so that she conceived and bare 3 sons and 2 daughters, and the child Samuel grew before the Lord. So of course, she continued to be blessed. So that's what I said. I think God did this for him, for himself. He knew the kind of woman that Hannah was. He knew what was going to happen, and of course, he opens her womb with fruit of, Samuel, and of course, then he continues to bless her with more children. Okay, so there was a purpose here, a plan, right? A plan. Now, in chapter 3, we won't go into the whole thing, but there's a miraculous event that takes place. Samuel is lying on his bed, and of course he hears a voice, and the voice calls Samuel. And so he thinks it's Eli, and he goes into Eli, and Eli says, what's the problem? He said, you called me? And, no. It happens again. And so Eli realizes that Samuel is being called by the Lord. So he says to Samuel, he says, listen, he said, when the voice calls you, he said, just say that your servant is here. Speak, Lord, for your servant heareth. Okay? And Samuel does that, and of course the Lord speaks to him and tells him what's going to happen to Eli. And he's kind of a little upset about it, because he realizes that what's going to happen is that the house of Eli, his sons, they're going to be destroyed. They're going to, their house, as it were, is not going to exist any longer. And when he gets up in the morning, Eli asks him what happened, what was said, and he tells him. He doesn't withhold it from him. He didn't want to tell him, but he did. And of course, Eli realizes that he has, kind of fallen down on the job here. He's not, been doing the right thing. And the last part of that is chapter 3, verse 20, it says, And all Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. So people realized that like Eli was kind of on the wane, and Samuel was growing, as it were, and especially before the Lord. And he was doing the right thing. Okay. Now, in chapter 4, we won't again get into that, but there was a war. The Philistines take the ark, and in verse 11, what happens? It says, this is chapter 4, verse 11, the ark of God was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. And of course, that was predicted. We see that, we have this, like I said, the failure of the priesthood. Chapter 15, it says, Now Eli was 98 years old, and his eyes were dim, he could not see. And the man said unto Eli, I am he that came out of the army and fled today out of the army. And he said, What is there done, my son? And the messenger answered and said, Israel is fled before the Philistines, and there hath been also great slaughter among the people. And thy two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead. And the ark of God is taken. I mean, this couldn't be, the worst news that anybody could hear, especially him, a priest of the Lord. Sons are dead, ark taken. Okay? 18, And it came to pass when he made mention of the ark of God that he fell from off the seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck brake, and he died, for he was an old man and heavy. And he had judged, you notice again, he had judged Israel 40 years. So even though he was a priest, we also see the word judged, used in connection with Eli. So that's what we were talking about before. We were saying about the patriarchs, the prophets, the leaders, the elders, the priests. All these people played significant parts, but some of these titles, these names, were interchangeable. So Eli was a priest, but it talks about him being a judge. But he's not listed in the book of Judges, you see. And then, like last week we had talked about, or the week before we had talked about the fact that Aaron was mentioned as a prophet, but yet we knew that he was to become a priest. And so he was the head, he was the high priest. But he was referred to as a prophet. Chapter 7. In chapter 7, verse 3, Samuel speaking to the people says, And Samuel spake unto all the house of Israel, saying, If ye do return unto the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the strange gods and Ashtaroth from among you, and prepare your hearts unto the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. Then the children of Israel did put away Baalim and Ashtaroth, and served the Lord only. And Samuel said, Gather all Israel in Mizpah, and I will pray for you unto the Lord. And they gathered together to Mizpah, and drew water, and poured it out before the Lord, and fasted on that day, and said, There we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the children of Israel in Mizpah. See, judge them. Again, that word judge. He's a prophet, but he's judging them. He's guiding them. He's leading them. He's praying for them. He's teaching them. He's telling them what's going to happen. Okay? And then, of course, how quick they were to pick up these other gods, right? Go and worship other gods and have idols and do all the things that they know they shouldn't be doing. 15. Chapter 7, verse 15, And Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life, and he went from year to year in circuit to Bethel and Gilgal and Mizpah, and judged Israel in all those places. And his return was to Ramah, for there was his house, and there he judged Israel, and there he built an altar unto the Lord. So, of course, again, you see this leadership role that he was providing. And, of course, in chapter 8, beside the death of Christ, probably one of the saddest events in the Bible takes place here in, 1 Samuel chapter 8. It says, verse 1, "And it came to pass when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of the second was Abiah, and they were judges in Beersheba. Now what happens? And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre," probably should have said filthy lucre anyway, "and took bribes and perverted judgment." So they took money. And of course they made decisions, I guess, based on who was going to pay them the most. That's basically what you're talking about here. So, in other words, corrupt judges. And of course in 4 it says, "Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel in Ramah and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all nations." But this thing, it displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us," and Samuel prayed unto the Lord. So the people realized that his sons were not good. So here, these priests, again, the failure of the priesthood, they're just not as strong as he is. Even though he's a good leader, he's a good man, he's dedicated his life to the Lord. His mother dedicated him to the Lord. He's walked in that path. He's done everything he's supposed to do. His sons are not, they're just not following. The people see it. He sees it. All right. In verse 7 it says, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people, in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them." And that is just a sad, sad note. I don't think it could get any sadder in a sense. I think the first time I read that, I cried. It was just the idea. It's like, how could they do this? What are they thinking? And he says to him, he said, "Don't you feel bad in a sense. They haven't rejected you, it's me." And it says, "According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me, and served other gods, so do they also unto thee." This is just a very, very bad day. Okay, so they reject, the theocracy. Now, of course, in 9 it says, "Now therefore hearken unto their voices of the Lord speaking to Samuel. Howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that will reign over them." And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. So he basically says to him, he says, "I want you to, I'm not sure it was really like a last-ditch effort, but he wants to give them this final warning. He says, I want them to understand what is going to happen to their way of life once we do this." He says, "I want you to tell the people this." Okay? And so we go here to verse 11, and it says, "And he said," this is now Samuel speaking to the people the words of the Lord. Okay? "And he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint them captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants, and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to work, to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants, and ye shall cry out in the day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Okay? So like I said, this is kind of like, listen, this is what you're going to get. You know, I want you to understand what this is all about. This is really no different than any other warning God has given. You know, it's just, you go back to Adam and Eve. He says, listen, you do this, you do that, that. And this is what it comes down to. He says, tell them, I want the people to understand what's going to happen. And of course, you know, this is their choosing. Verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Right? So it's like, no, we don't want God fighting our battles. We want a king to fight our battles. Is that stupid or what? Okay? 21. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. So he basically went back and told the Lord. I mean, the Lord certainly knew. And in 22 it says, and the Lord said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. Okay? All right, so we're going to stop there today. We'll pick it up next time and show you the important role that Samuel continues to play in the nation of Israel, choosing the king, Saul, David, you know, and the other history of his particular time. Okay? If everybody would stand, please.